I never thought a single evening could change the course of everything. It was supposed to be simple, just a quiet dinner. Just me, a glass of wine, and Alex, my husband's son from another marriage. He is home for the summer. A break from the usual, a chance for him to figure things out before heading off to college. But somehow, it wasn't simple at all. The air in the house felt different that night, quiet but charged. It wasn't the kind of silence you'd expect. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavier, like something was about to happen. I can't even explain it. It's strange, really, how sometimes you can sense a change before it even happens. And there I was, sitting at the dinner table, pretending to be fine, while I could feel this uneasy knot in my chest. Something was creeping up inside of me, something I didn't even know was there. Alex had been home for a few weeks by then, just a quiet presence, a shadow in the corner of my life. I hardly noticed him at first. We didn't talk much. He wasn't a kid anymore, not really. But then, somewhere in the middle of that long summer, things started to shift. I couldn't tell you when exactly. Maybe it was the way he started looking at me a little too long, or the way he'd sit down beside me, too close, his eyes searching mine. But I never said anything, and I never expected it to matter. I thought I had control over my life, over my feelings, over my marriage. But there was something in that house, in that moment, that made me question everything I thought I knew. It's funny, how life works. You go through the motions, thinking you're in control, thinking you've got it all figured out. But in the blink of an eye, everything can change. And in one quiet, irreversible moment, I learned that some lines, once crossed, can never be erased. The house was still, the air thick. Alex was in the other room, probably watching TV, doing whatever. I could hear him, but it was like he wasn't there. And yet, there was this thing between us, this tension. I wish I could say I felt it building, but I didn't. It just happened. The night that started so simple, so ordinary, turned into something I couldn't forget, something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. And in that moment, I realized everything changed, and there was no going back. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. That summer felt like it would never end. The days bled into one another, indistinguishable from the last. The house, always too quiet, always too empty. It felt like the walls were closing in on me, and no matter how hard I tried to shake it, I couldn't escape the loneliness. Mark was always gone. Another trip, another late-night phone call that was too casual, too convenient to be questioned. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd seen him for more than a few hours in one stretch. It's funny, really, how you get used to something even when you know it's breaking you. The emptiness of our marriage had settled in like a weight I didn't know how to shake. He wasn't bad. He just wasn't here. And as time passed, that absence became more than just physical. It started to spread into the corners of our lives, into every room, into every conversation we didn't have. I think I had gotten used to it. Until Alex came home. He wasn't supposed to be here for long, a few weeks, maybe a month. Just enough time to figure things out before heading to college. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was polite, distant, just going through the motions. But as the days wore on, I noticed the way he started to pay attention. I'd catch him watching me. Subtle, but there. The way his gaze lingered a little longer than usual. His eyes tracing my movements, the way I reached for my coffee in the mornings, the way I'd sigh when the silence in the house became too loud. It felt like he saw more than I'd ever realized. And I started noticing him too. I hadn't meant to. But there was something in the way he looked at me, something that made me feel seen. Maybe that was the problem. Mark was gone, and Alex's presence filled the spaces he left behind. At first, I didn't recognize it for what it was. I told myself it was just a phase, just a distraction. But then I started to feel it, that tension, a shift in the air between us, and I began to wonder, could it be that I wasn't the only one feeling it? But sometimes, the line between innocence and something more, thinner than you think. This section keeps the pacing slow and introspective, allowing Emma's emotional distance from her husband and growing emotional connection with Alex to gradually build. The foreshadowing subtly hints at the developing tension. Would you like to continue to the next act or revise anything here? Feeling the tension? Like this video if you want to see how this story unfolds. It was a night like any other, except it wasn't. Mark called. Again. He wouldn't be coming home. Another late-night meeting, another business trip he couldn't avoid. His voice was casual, almost too light. He couldn't know what was happening in the silence of our home. I set the phone down, but the weight of his absence hung in the air. I sat there for a moment, the stillness suffocating. Alex came down a little later, still in his sweats, his hair damp from the shower. He moved slowly, like he didn't want to disturb the air between us. But there he was, close, too close. He sat across from me, that familiar intensity in his eyes. I couldn't look away. "You look lonely," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I swallowed, tried to laugh it off, but it felt hollow. The joke stuck in my throat. "I'm just tired," I said, but even to my own ears, it sounded like a lie. I wanted to change the subject, to deflect, to push the tension back where it came from, but it wouldn't leave. Not this time. He didn't look away. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, like the distance between us was unbearable. His gaze held something I wasn't ready to face. "I think you deserve more, Emma." The words hit me like a punch, but I couldn't breathe. More? More than this. I didn't know how to respond. What could I say to that? How could I possibly respond without something shifting in me that I didn't know I was capable of? I was supposed to push him away, tell him it was all wrong. But instead, I just stared at him, my heart racing in my chest. Every word he said felt like a key unlocking something I'd kept hidden for years. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't the only one who felt this. I hadn't meant to feel this way, but there it was, undeniable, hanging between us like an invisible thread pulling tighter with each passing second. I couldn't stop myself. I didn't even know how. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was a moment that would change everything, and I knew it. But once you open that door, it's impossible to close again. What do you think is coming next? Comment below with your thoughts. I read every response. The next morning came with the cruel light of reality. It was too bright, too harsh, slicing through the curtains and making everything feel exposed. The house felt emptier than before, like the walls were closing in, suffocating me with the weight of what had happened. I told myself it was a mistake, then just a moment of weakness, a fleeting lapse in judgment, that it didn't mean anything. I could forget it. I had to. But Alex didn't let go. Not really. Every corner of this house reminded me of him, his presence still lingering in the air, like a shadow I couldn't shake. It was in the way he looked at me, the way he touched my arm when I passed him in the kitchen. It was in the quiet notes he slipped into my purse, the small things that made it impossible to move on, impossible to forget. I wanted to ignore it, to push it down and pretend nothing had changed. But that night, it had changed me. Maybe it wasn't love, I told myself. But for the first time in so long, I felt something more than numbness. It wasn't the kind of love I had once known, the calm, steady rhythm of a partnership. It wasn't the kind of love that makes you feel safe, grounded. This was something else. It was alive, and that terrified me. The guilt was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in it. Every breath I took felt heavier, each moment of silence between us more unbearable. But at the same time, there was something else, a strange, dangerous freedom. It wasn't just the weight of what I'd done. It was the release that followed, the feeling of being seen for the first time in so long. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just going through the motions. In that single moment with him, I felt alive again. And that terrified me. because I knew deep down that once you open a door like that, there's no going back. But sometimes the hardest part isn't crossing the line. It's realizing you can't unsee what you've done. And guilt, temptation, and desire. What would you do in my shoes? Share this video and see what your friends think. And now, every time I walk through this house, I feel the weight of that night. It's in the quiet. The silence isn't just in the rooms, it's inside me, pressing against my chest. It's like I'm walking through a dream I can't wake up from, the echoes of that moment with Alex still hanging in the air. I try to go about my days. I try to move on, to pretend like things are normal, but nothing feels normal anymore. Some lines, once crossed, can never be erased. The rooms feel different now. I see them through a different lens. The kitchen, where I used to make dinner for Mark. The hallway, where Alex used to walk by without a second thought. Now, every place in this house holds the memory of that moment. And no matter how hard I try to ignore it, it's always there. I can't unfeel what happened. I can't unsee the way Alex looked at me, the way he saw me. I wonder sometimes if I would have ever felt this way if Mark had been here, if he had truly seen me the way Alex did. But I can't undo the past. I can't undo that night. And I know deep down I don't want to. But how can I move forward with this hanging over me? How do I live in a house that is both home and prison? What do I do now? What would you have done? And can you ever truly walk away from a moment that changes you forever? The answer, I don't know. But I know this: I'll never be the same. Because some doors, once opened, lead you into a place you can't find your way out of. This story isn't over yet. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part of Emma's journey.